Hi guys, Andy N, spoken label. Easter Saturday. Oh, it's been a glorious day today because people are wondering. Me and Amanda went for a walk today up at Shepley Woods at the back of us. So it's 15 minutes walk either way. And we're out for over 2 hours. It's fucking gorgeous it was. So it kind of makes sense that I'm doing a spoken label session today in a walked way, but do it with a friend, okay? This gentleman, eagle-eyed people may remember he was on fairly recently as well, weren't you, Tony? Only reasonably recently.
Only a few. It feels like only a few weeks ago. A lot
I
has
think
happened, but it doesn't actually seem like that long ago.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. Now we had Tony on people, Eagle Eye People Knows, a couple of month or two ago anyway, talking about the relaunch of his night on Tuesday night, which is henceforth Tuesday Tony. But we promised to do a full session with him nearer the time, so that's why we got him here today. But before we do that, Tony, give us an update on your night on Tuesday. How's it going?
Oh, it's going really well actually. We've added something a bit new into proceedings.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Yeah, well, we call it half-ass karaoke.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And essentially what it is if someone wants to get up and sing a song, like they come up on the mic, sing the song. We don't have the actual backing track. They have to sing along to the actual music.
Oh god.
Which
Oh
makes
god.
it a bit half-ass as well. But we do have, like, in most cases, we can get the lyrics coming up for them as well. But sometimes the Wi-Fi might go, or sometimes there's a buffering problem or whatever.
God.
But to be honest, we embrace the chaos quite a bit there. But in fairness, I'm only joking. We don't really have any technical issues at all. But it's been really, really good fun. And if anything, people are coming down a lot for that at the moment.
Brilliant. I've got to ask you then, obviously, and this is not bad mouthing anybody that's been doing it. What's the most unexpected song you've had come up in this so far? Is the one that really sticks in your brain, mate?
So what, a karaoke song, you
Yeah,
mean?
this half-ass karaoke request. Yeah, I'm not saying the worst because I'm not a big karaoke lover, but there must be one that caught you out that you weren't expecting.
There were these two guys there in the on the week just gone before. I can't remember their names. And they just popped in for a couple of drinks. But they come up and they said, "Can we do Killing in the Name of?"
Oh,
By
bleep now.
Rage Against the Machine. And I love that. I love that song.
Me
Um,
too.
in fact, I used to get, when I used to get a bit tiddly, I used to get on the mic, and over the bit that's F you, I won't do what you
Yeah.
tell me, I used to say thank you because you came on a Tuesday. I really love that song. But they got up and did it, and I'm not joking. It was one of the most amazing performances I've ever seen. They embodied Rage Against the Machine as
Wow.
two, and
I
they
always remember
really
when it came
nailed
out
it.
last single because
Yeah.
with the album that followed, they didn't put the lyrics on the album originally. So you can probably track them down nowadays, but like it's right, you'd have to really pay attention to get the lyrics on that at the time
Yeah.
itself because it was hard. Apart from the obvious F word and another F word that comes at the end of it, which we won't talk about. They're all brilliant. Anyway, mate, we're just talking today talk about you really and what else you've been up to. So take us a bit back in time then to
Okay.
where all the only a couple of years ago, of course.
All right.
What
Okay.
started you off in your creativity originally then?
Well, I to take it all the way back, it was my granddad. My granddad was a musician, and
Oh yeah.
yes, and like some of my earliest memories of my granddad, he'd be sat in his dining room with lots and lots of scores, and he was a trumpet player and a singer in the band. Not at the same time. That would have been quite clever, but like he
It
was
would be very innovative, that, yeah.
but, he was like a bit like the band leader, and he would get like the standards. I've got some of them over there actually, just what they call lead sheets of with just the melody and chords, and he'd score it for like the drummer and the bass player and the
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
the brass section, or what have you. So my like one of my earliest memories of my granddad is like writing on this, writing scratch like scores and just looking at it and thinking, wow, it just looked like a completely different language. And that's what piqued my interest, as it were. But long story short, I ended up sort of studying in Salford. Sort of fell into the Thirsty Scholar gig, about 23 years ago. Just went down to sound engineer for a band and ended up being the sound engineer for the night. And then when the other guys lost interest, I started running it for, like, say, full time. Started running it permanently. Yeah, and off the side of that, we've also had, like, 10 years ago this year, we like stand-up comedy as well. We started sort of integrating stand-up comedy into it. And I got an interest in poetry and rap and spoken word. So I sort of like try and get as much of that in as I possibly can as well. So yeah, so much is that, so much over a long period of time.
Yeah, now obviously, I knew about the rap thing first of all. So tell us about where your love of rap came from next then.
Well, I'd always like quite enjoyed it, but I was like a rock kid. Do you know what I mean?
Rock, like, yeah,
I,
yeah, I know what you
I
mean.
epitomized grunge, I think, in like during the 90s because I was like, a young teenager. And like it wasn't the done thing to like hip hop, but I did like it. So I don't think I've sort of like really expressed that I liked it that much. But yeah, I was like, and I remember when I got to college, I got to go and see Eminem, one of his first ever gigs in the UK in Brixton Academy. And I remember everyone was dead disappointed because Dr. Dre hadn't come, and I was like, it's crazy now to think that people would be disappointed going into an Eminem gig, sort of like considering how popular he's been for as long as he has been. But yeah, I kind of got really into performing it and doing it. I started watching epic rap battles of history, and I really enjoyed that. And I was like thinking, it embraced sort of my love of comedy, my love of music, and I was like, I'd really like to try rapping. So I sort of challenged myself to rap particular songs or whatever, and then I started writing poetry and rap based poetry and stuff. And yeah, it sort of sprang from that.
Yeah, now did poetry come before that, or does poetry come during the rap when you're starting getting going in it, really?
Well, I used to write poetry in high school, sort of like it was like a bit of a hopeless romantic. So I think wrote wrote like dozens of poems. I wouldn't even know where they were now. I think I had them on a little computer, like a really early like 90s like laptop, and I think it just crashed one
Oh,
day with like, but probably for the best. I don't, if it had been any good, I probably would have remembered it.
yeah. Join the club. I've done the way around really, where like all mine are in A5. Most of my time on the computer and archived, always have been. But I've got nearly all of mine in A5 hardback books as hard copies. And I've got, would you believe, mate, I'm on the 65th book now.
I can believe that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
can believe.
started I started writing when I was 10 and I'm nearly 51 now. So you think really like it just shows you if you keep everything archived properly, how much bloody stuff you bring up sometimes without even meaning to. So
Did you ever dip it back into it and sort of
yeah,
like?
I do. So I do
Oh,
sometimes. Yeah, yeah. Some of the very early ones are very painful. They are very, very painful. It's like you said, it's full of the real bad teenage anguish, and some of them are just terrible parodies of songs that are quite well known at the time, shall we say? Right. Certainly, I would have got sued if I tried to releasing some of them in a book. The best way to put it is in for the best as well. So, now, obviously, I said, everything like we said, tell us about then how this love of your rap and your poetry has changed over time then for yourself.
sort of interesting with the rap. I sort of like had a sort of piqued my interest when I was a teenager,
Mm.
and sort of like a bit more so when I got to university. Sort of like I remember like really expanding what I was listening to. I remember like listening to quite a lot of jazz because I was studying jazz. Um, and I remember sort of listening to a lot of Rage Against the Machine, a lot of Wu-Tang Clan, like back there, a lot of Eminem, of course, and like
Do really like the first two Wu-Tang Clan albums. Are brilliant, they are, them.
so.
Really, really, really good albums. I've still got them both of them somewhere as well. I said
Oh yeah,
I lost track of them after that, John. I think one or two of the members started dying, didn't they? So,
I know, but they've done it sort of like they sort of done together. I saw them live a few years ago at Glastonbury,
mm,
but they were great. But I love 36 Chambers
yeah.
album, not only because like it's an amazing rap album and like really sort of visceral and very very poignant within its time, um yeah, yeah, absolutely love that album. Sorry, I lost my thread there a little bit. I apologize.
Oh, don't worry, mate.
It comes
Yeah, I
back
know
up.
it is. Yeah, I do love 36 Chambers. People wonder that's obviously the first album. And I did really like the second one, Wu Tang Forever, as well. Actually, I thought that was a great, great album as well, to do that. So, did you have much interest in the Mancunian hip hop at the early 90s, really?
No.
Oh,
No,
really? Wow.
I don't sort of like
That's a bit of a surprise, that,
not
yeah.
be able to expand upon that. Not that I have anything against it at all. Just sort of like it wasn't what I was listening to. I grew up in Southeast London.
Oh, of course, yeah, yeah, me too. Yeah,
So
Keith told us how much run you were from London originally, yeah, so.
yeah, so don't get me wrong. It's sort of like I was in. It was interesting to hear what was coming out of Manchester, being in London, and sort of obviously getting prepared to go up for university. But like the Manchester scene was something that I wouldn't have really had much interest when it was going on because I would have been very very young. At
Yeah,
least not young.
you're only
Me,
ickle baby, yeah, should we
yeah.
say, right?
So yeah, but I must admit, sort of like by the time I was getting ready to come up here and study, it was something that I was like, oh, I thought that does sound good. But yeah, sort of like most of my interests were sort of like rock based, and sort of the rap that I was exposed to was like the very mainstream stuff. To be honest, sort of like just probably through my own ignorance, and now.
It is what at the time, like I said, is I can name a couple to you because I remember when I used to work at the job centre a few years ago, or more than a few years ago, and I remember coming quite pally with him. Yeah, do you remember a guy called MC Busby?
I'm not sure I'm not sure I've had the
No,
pleasure.
no, he had a quite big hit over there called "Never Change," where it sampled Bruce Hornsby to the way it is, and that's well worth. Anyone knows the Monkey Rap, which is a bit of an underground classic nowadays. Brilliant. I had the pleasure of meeting him a few times. Great bloke, really, really interesting man. So.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I was definitely a track out. I'm always up for checking out new tracks I've not heard before. So yeah, I'll definitely give that.
The other one always sticks my head back to the Ruthless Rap Assassins as well. That were featured Kermit that later joined Black Grape, right? So
I heard of Black Grape, but the other one I'm not familiar with. So again, something that yeah, I definitely like to listen to it.
Anyway, so yeah, tell us about what are you up to today nowadays in creative wise? And obviously, apart from running the Thirsty Scholar and the Zombie Shack, then do you get much time for doing anything creative outside that? Really?
I do sort of. I'm not really composing as much when in uni. Sort of like it was a songwriting machine. It's like pumped out a lot of songs back then, but I struggle to write songs at the moment. Sort of brand new original ones. I find it easier to write poetry at the moment. But when I tend to when I get some time, to be honest, what I do is I grab my ukulele and I'll try and do sort of like think about a cover song or something. Sort of like there's a really good version of Boys in the Hood by Dan Hack, I think it's called. And they do it sort of like as a slow sort of indie one, and I sort of like I quite like the feel from that. So trying to emulate that on the ukulele, that's been fun. And
we've got a stand-up comic, alternative folk singer, of course, as called Grant Kernu that reads at Speakeasy fairly regularly. I've got to say, you must know Grant. I would have been surprised if you hadn't read out the first scholar. He's fantastic. You made me think of him straight away. Then I Grant. So yeah,
I love Grant. Yeah, sort of like his ukulele and his dialect, excellent stuff.
Yeah, that's why I say, but fair play to you. I know you were telling me last time we spoke off, Mike, hadn't you been doing some work with somebody I've interviewed? And I think I may have got the name wrong here. Was it Raven?
Oh,
was it
Raven?
Raven?
Yeah, Raven.
Raven, wasn't it?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, sort of, I was putting together like this rap album, sort of for fun. I met up with a guy who was touring from Amsterdam in a band called the Panic Tapes. His name is Patrick, lovely guy, and he's a producer, and as well as being the bass player in this band. And I got up and did some of my spoken word, and we got chatting. He was like, "Oh, I'd like to make some beats for your stuff," and we stayed in touch. And he sort of sent he sent the things over from Amsterdam, and then I'd sort of write something, or I'd use something I'd already written, and sort of got together about 8 tracks. And we were like, oh, it'd be nice to have some guest vocalists and things, because like I like singing, but I'm not particularly good at singing. So one of the artists that we worked with was Raven, on what was the name of the track now? The name of the track is Alcoholic Synonymous, and it's a poem that I normally do a cappella. I might, if we get a chance, might do that one later.
Yeah, I'll have to get you to send me this. Is the track available for people to hear? Is it, or is it in your archives?
It's not yet. We sort of been sat on it. It's sort of everything took a pause over the pandemic, and sort of not really a chance to fire it back up. So, but yeah, it's sort of in theory, I tell you what, that gives me impetus to go and do it, doesn't it? So
Yeah,
what
I do.
say,
I
try and
would love to hear
get
it.
it out
Really
there.
would. So I've not met Raven yet. Oh God, she was. People wondering when I had her on spoken label. Oh, she was cracking me up all night long. She was. She had
Yeah.
that sort of. There's a rare something about it that made me smile actually in a really good way. That's why. Lovely lady. So
Oh yeah, she's a good egg, very talented sort
yeah,
of too.
Dave. I love the personality as well. I think she's brilliant fun. So, anyway, so okay, where do you want your creativity to take you next? Then, do you have any sort of ideas?
Well, at the minute, sort of like in terms of creativity, it's sort of like a bit off the chart, as it were. But sort of like I sort of train a lot of martial arts, you know, sort of like
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So tell us about them. We'll go into that topic then. So yes, I do want to know about that. So tell us about your karate then. So you're telling me off mic before we started recording. You've done 3 classes today, and
yeah.
one of them had had me aching all day. So I don't know how you've done 3.
Well, I was teaching them sort of like about in 2016. I started getting into martial arts, and I did quite a few before I landed on karate, and I still do other things as well. But in terms of the karate, you know, it was just something sort of like found it kept me fit, sort of it like and sort of like I just stuck with it as a discipline, you know, sort of kept me quite grounded, kept me quite at peace. And sort of I carried on, sort of started coaching when I got my green belt, and when I got my brown belt, I started teaching a class or two, and then sort of now I'm sort of like the head instructor in Manchester, and it's a bit crackers really. But in terms of creativity and what I do with my creativity now, sort of like without sort of getting bogged down in sort of like lots of heavy nerdy martial arts stuff, sort of like I feel like I'm in a place with my martial arts where I can creativity can now be a part of what I'm doing. Like, you know, I was teaching a class today and that to look at the material and put it together as like thinking, oh, you know what, I've got this bit of material here and actually dovetails really nicely into this and it works well with the overall concept I'm trying to get across. So yeah, I'm kind of, well, I am being creative and I'm doing it through art, just not in the way that I'd have imagined myself doing it maybe like 10 years ago, you know.
Yeah, nice. I think the common myth sometimes with creative people. It's like certain like when I said I started writing poetry when I was 10, I wouldn't have envisaged 40 years later. First of all, I'm still doing it, less so nowadays, but I've been doing podcasting, my own sort of music, running a night, and now writing all kinds of things, book poetry. Yeah, so I think it's, tell me your opinion on this one, Johnny, as we start wrapping up, mate. Do you believe in creativity? It goes in the natural progression, really, doesn't it? Not always the way you're expecting.
Yeah, it can be quite organic. It's interesting that like the germ of an idea, and you look at this initial thing and you think, oh, that's going to be a story, that's going to be a song or what have you, and sort of the way sort of things sort of branch off, and they can become their own thing. You know, they're sort of like their own unit or like a completely different piece of art altogether. Or I'm always interested by the way art influences other types of art, you know,
Yeah.
sort of like how stories sort of become the basis for operas, or sort of like famous folklore gets translated into a painting or what have you, and how those things are interpreted. Or it interests me.
Yeah, I agree. And I also was I'm an ex-Buddhist as well. I don't get as much time nowadays for full meditation, but I know the links between like what you said about your karate and takes you into deep meditational pose almost, doesn't it? Like in very, very different ways doing full meditation, I think, as well.
I That meditation is what made me
Yeah,
get into martial arts in the first place. I started off sort of
better
doing Tai
before that, yeah.
Chi,
Yeah.
and then sort of that took me down sort of like a path down some Chinese martial arts, and then so it ended up sort of at karate, you know, sort of like Okinawan Japanese martial art or what have you. But but yeah, sort of it's such an interesting sort of path to go down. But what the way I sort of see meditation is like I try and as often as I can be able to sit with what I'm feeling or thinking and around. I find that incredibly therapeutic, just to feel what I'm feeling and just react to stuff and what have you. But I always think it's like the flip side of like, you know, sort of the fighting and all sort of like, you know, the sparring and the hard graft that goes into martial arts. I think sort of like, I think you can't be sort of all the time. You need this flip side to it. And I do think that sort of the two things together make sense. That's
Yeah.
it's not being disparaging against any sort of combat sports or anything like that, because I love combat sports, sort of like, but I do think meditation is is so important, especially today with mental health today being the way it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely with you. I think you need it nowadays, particularly as we're coming out of the house of labs because of lockdown ourselves, because I know it's caused an awful lot of people damage, and it got me through it, to honestly, that's why as well. So I agree with you completely, Tony, with that. So anyway, mate, what we'll do, I want to start wrapping up in a moment now anyway, but let you do what item was the plugs then. If people want to find out more about your night, first of all, on the Tuesday, where do you recommend they go?
Well, I always say sort of reach out to me. Sort of, I always put stuff on my Facebook page about it, and Tuesday Tony William Bolton on Facebook. Sort of like, but just come down. I'd say it's the best thing. Just come down on a Tuesday. We have sign up at 7 o'clock for all different artists, musicians, poets, comedians. Spoken where we're going to have an improv troupe coming on quite soon, which is going to be great. So yeah, come down at 7 o'clock. Sign up. And then we'll get you on at some point. And then once all the live sort of open mic stuff is finished, afterwards we have like a good sing along, with the our fast karaoke stuff. But just come down, Thirsty Scholar every Tuesday. Sign up from 7. Show starts about 8 o'clock, and it's always free. So just come. That'll be great.
Sounds good to me, that, mate. So what we'll do, we'll wrap up this point, buddy, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes when Tony's going to do a few bits and pieces for us. So watch this, please. See you all in 2 shakes of the dice.